All right, so today we're going to dive into something that's been in the news lately and probably pretty close to a lot of our hearts, Sesame Street.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it feels like it's been around forever.
Absolutely.
Maybe you had your own kids watching it. We found this really interesting article, A Storm on Sesame Street, and it kind of got us thinking about all the changes that are happening behind the scenes with how kids watch stuff these days.
Yeah, for sure. Sesame Street has always had that feeling of like, it's been around forever, it's always going to be there,
Yeah.
but the media landscape is changing so rapidly.
Right.
And this article really digs into, how Sesame Workshop is adapting to these new challenges.
And what that means for what your kids are seeing, you know?
Exactly.
So right off the bat, the article mentions budget cuts, layoffs, things like that.
Yeah.
Which for something as, iconic as Sesame Street kind of makes you raise an eyebrow. Like, what's going on here?
It really does. And I think one of the biggest factors in this is, the end of their deal with HBO.
Mm-hmm.
They had this first-run content deal with HBO where new episodes would premiere there.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's ended. So those new episodes are back on PBS Kids.
So back to its roots.
Exactly. Kind of a full circle moment.
Yeah, and I think the article said under the HBO deal, they were making something like 35 episodes a season.
Wow, yeah, around there.
Which is a lot more than...
Compared to the PBS days, yeah. They were doing around 20, so that's a big jump.
Huge jump. Yeah, so that must have had a big financial impact, just in terms of, the resources needed to do that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, they had that influx of cash from HBO to make those episodes. But now they're having to find new ways to keep that revenue stream going.
Right, because kids these days, they don't just sit down and watch TV,
It's all on demand. It's streaming.
It's all over the place.
Yeah, so Sesame Workshop is releasing new episodes every month.
Wow.
Across all these different streaming platforms.
So it's a whole different ball game.
It really is. They're having to keep up with that demand for fresh content constantly.
And I think this is kind of a sign of the times. We even saw that HBO Max canceled their animated Sesame Street spin-off, Little Ellen.
Oh, right, yeah.
So it's like belt-tightening all around, even for something that feels as, established as Sesame Street.
I think it really speaks to the broader challenges that media companies are facing.
Yeah.
Having to make these tough choices about where to invest their resources.
And I think, it gets even more interesting when you look at how these financial decisions might actually be changing the show itself.
Yeah, the look and feel of it.
Yeah, the article kind of hinted that we might be seeing more of those shorter animated segments and maybe less of those classic live-action street scenes.
Which is so iconic, right?
I mean, those are the things we all remember,
Totally.
Yeah.
So why do you think that shift is happening?
Well, I mean, from a practical standpoint, animation can be a lot cheaper and faster to produce than live action.
Right.
And then you also have to think about how kids watch stuff these days.
Shorter attention spans.
They're used to things that are fast-paced, bite-sized.
Exactly. They want to jump from one thing to the next quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Sesame Workshop is trying to meet those expectations.
Right. Meet them where they are. And
Right.
the article made it clear, that bump in episodes during the HBO years really helped them financially.
Yeah.
Now that that's not there, it makes sense that they would be looking at ways to, be more efficient.
Streamline things.
Yeah, streamline things. They even mentioned, some organizational restructuring. So it sounds like they're really shaking things up behind the scenes.
Adapting to the times.
And this raises a really interesting question, for parents who are like, wait a minute, is Sesame Street still going to be Sesame Street?
Yes, it's still going to have that same educational value.
Exactly.
I mean, those live action scenes, they're so core to the show's identity.
Right. It's about the interaction. It's about the community,
Absolutely. And I think that's something parents will want to pay attention to.
But it's important to remember, too, that, the core mission of Sesame Workshop hasn't changed.
No, not at all. It's still all about helping kids grow smarter, stronger, and kinder.
And that's been their driving force for decades.
I mean, think about it. Sesame Street has always been adapting. Since its early days on public television, they were figuring out how to use this new medium to reach kids.
Right. And now they're doing the same thing with streaming. It's just the latest chapter in that story. So I guess the big takeaway here is that Sesame Street is facing the same financial pressures as a lot of media companies, and that's leading to some changes in how they do things.
Yeah, and I think it's a reminder that even something as beloved as Sesame Street has to evolve to stay relevant.
And that's what they're doing.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating to watch how they're navigating this new landscape.
So here's something to think about as we wrap up. we've seen how Sesame Street has had to adapt to all these changes in media.
Yeah.
What other long-standing educational programs might be facing similar turning points?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Right, because it's not just about Sesame Street. It's about how we make sure that kids are getting that kind of enriching content.
Absolutely. Because the way kids consume media is going to continue to change.
It's not slowing down.
So these programs have to find ways to keep up.
So think about that. What are those shows that you grew up with
Yeah.
that you hope will still be around for your kids or your grandkids?
And how can they evolve to meet the needs of those future generations?
That's something worth pondering. So thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.